Now to an NBC 15 News reality check. Overgrown grass, standing water, muddy splotches. Hardly a fitting resting place for loved ones.
The conditions at this forgotten cemetery made even worse by the fact that several people cannot even find their relatives' grave sites.
NBC 15's Rachel Wilkerson has spent months investigating the conditions at Prichard Memorial Cemetery.
The second local cemetery now involved in a criminal investigation.
Kim and Greg, this cemetery is entirely different. More and more concerned families have reached out to me, all with the same problem. They say their loved ones are lost out here.
It hurts for somebody to even do her like that, honestly. She don't deserve it.
Loving mother Latanja Powell.
That's my twin.
Was her daughter Nakia Powell's best friend, her superhero.
She lit up the room with her presence.
But Nakia suffers every day since she lost her mother in January 2018. She can't visit her mother's grave because no one knows where she's buried at Prichard Memorial Cemetery. The family put this garden gate around an area they believe is close to Latanja's final resting place.
And we don't know we talking to our mother or we talking to her company. Like, we don't know who we talking with. We could be talking to the grass for all we know.
She's far from the only one feeling that anger, that pain over their loved one's missing gravesite. Josie Shelton was married to her beloved husband Robert for 36 years. She's been searching for his gravesite for 13 long years.
I couldn't tell you where my husband at today.
It's been even longer for Jaquel Bridges. She spent her entire adult life not knowing where her father, Michael Bridges, is buried.
My father, that's located out there somewhere, I have no clue where he's located at.
Then there's Kalia Connor.
Nobody can find my dad, nowhere. So I'm just wondering, like, where's my father?
And Brenda Kidd, who can't find her husband's grave.
All I want to know is, where is John?
When you first arrive at Prichard Memorial Cemetery, you'll see this sign stating it's an at-will cemetery. It says all families must maintain the proper location of their loved one's grave. There is no caretaker nor section for the cemetery. But you can't maintain what you can't find, and there's no catalog of grave sites at this forgotten cemetery.
That's what it is. Seems like everybody forgot about this cemetery. It's just like a throwaway cemetery.
The grass is maintained near some grave sites, but you can see most of the property is filled with tall grass. Loved ones struggle to walk through
In a walkway where you can go walk.
while paying their respects.
It's just awful. This is a bad place to have a relative to be buried.
The women tell us the graves were originally marked with wooden stakes, lost to time and the elements. Josie says her husband is supposed to have a headstone.
You don't even know where his headstone is, stick that's supposed to be in the, you can't locate none of that.
These families used different funeral homes years ago. Now they can't find anyone who owns the cemetery or, most importantly, the burial records.
I've been trying to find an answer for somebody to tell me something about this cemetery.
Powell says she regrets burying her mother here. For her, this forgotten cemetery is a lost cause.
I just wish I could do it again. I promise you I wouldn't decide this. I promise.
We found out burials are temporarily shut down at this cemetery because there's another criminal investigation going on. We'll tell you why in tomorrow's edition of The Forgotten Cemetery on NBC 15 News at 5. Reporting in Prichard, I'm Rachel Wilkerson, NBC 15 News.
Well, tonight, an exclusive NBC 15 reality check. Decades of unmarked graves.
Questions of where loved ones are buried, and now an active criminal investigation at Prichard Memorial Cemetery.
NBC 15's Rachel Wilkerson is uncovering the secrets of the forgotten cemetery.
Kim and Greg, we were brought here by several complaints from families that they can't find their loved ones' grave sites. When we started investigating, we discovered that many of these graves should not be here.
What you've got is 1 and 2. Nobody had ever come in to assess it as a cemetery.
NBC 15 dug through records and discovered that legally Prichard Memorial Cemetery is broken up into 3 pieces of property. Attorney Tyler Pritchett with the Mobile County Revenue Commission says his records show sections 1 and 2, the front of the property where you enter, were never deemed a cemetery.
So all of these years, 1 and 2 was never considered a cemetery.
Right. Those pieces have never been to our records owned by a cemetery or deemed to be used as a cemetery.
Another clue, these are not cemetery properties. These two pieces of property are taxed. Legal cemeteries are not required to pay property tax. The Revenue Commission says only Section 3 carries the cemetery designation.
The third piece of property that you've identified as 3 is a cemetery that we have associated as the owner as Prichard Memorial Cemetery.
The Alabama Association of Cemeteries says to bury someone, you have to have approval from your governing entity. In this case, that is the Prichard City Council. But Prichard's Environmental Department says there are no records showing Sections 1 and 2 were ever zoned as a cemetery. Prichard Environmental says that means dozens of loved ones buried in these 2 sections shouldn't be here. It's an upsetting situation for Jaquel Bridges. She's been searching for her father's grave for years.
It's sad that you have people that's your family that's buried over here, and it's not even part of a cemetery. And that's very sad. That's disrespectful.
NBC 15 made this discovery after Section 1 was purchased in a tax sale by New Birth Community Church a few months ago. The same church, along with its former pastor, Cedric McMillan, were convicted and fined last month for operating another cemetery without a license. That cemetery, Heritage Memorial Gardens, is just feet away from Prichard Memorial Cemetery on the same block. This news of separate properties comes as a surprise for some who have loved ones here.
And you know, that is really ridiculous.
While this decades-old web is untangled, Prichard Environmental has ordered a temporary stop to all burials here at Prichard Memorial Cemetery. We've uncovered more information about this property, including the arrest of the cemetery's founder. We'll bring you that at 5 o'clock tomorrow on the special reality check on the Forgotten Cemetery. Reporting in Prichard, I'm Rachel Wilkerson, NBC 15 News.
Tonight, an NBC 15 exclusive reality check into a forgotten cemetery. Families contacted us because they could not find the grave sites of their loved ones at Prichard Memorial Cemetery.
Our investigation discovered only half of the property was ever zoned as cemetery, even though hundreds of people are buried all over the grounds. Tonight, NBC 15's Rachel Wilkerson is uncovering new information.
Our investigation revealed the Prichard Memorial property has changed hands several times, leading to today's confusion. Tonight, we're tracing the cemetery back decades to its roots. The name Albert Reese once carried weight in Prichard. Need proof? Here's the road named after him on the northeast side of Prichard. It's the place where Reese made his home. It's where his son Kenneth still lives to this day.
I wouldn't want to live nowhere else.
Albert Reese was a successful businessman in an era where things weren't easy for an African-American entrepreneur. He established Reese Funeral Home in 1974, a business which still bears his name, although it's no longer in the family. Reese had plans, big plans. He asked the city of Prichard to allow him to start Prichard Memorial Cemetery on a plot of land off Stile Avenue.
It was for people who really didn't have a whole lot of money to pay for the expensive grave spaces. You know, they could always go to Prichard Memorial and afford the grave spaces. You know, that was his dream, really, to help people who didn't have a whole lot of money.
But the city council didn't approve of Reese's plan. The mayor and the council went back and forth with Albert Reese for years over health inspections and all the other requirements to legally establish a cemetery. Records show Albert fought back.
I guess the dream he had, and you know, he wanted to help people, that he wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to let nothing stop him.
Albert carried out his plan without the approval of the city. He started burying people on this land. In the 70s, Prichard police arrested Albert Reese, accused him of burying people where he shouldn't.
They didn't want him to open a cemetery in that neighborhood.
But Albert Reese pressed on. He worked with his business partners to realize his vision for Prichard Memorial Cemetery and eventually received zoning approval. Kenneth Reese, Albert's son, worked for years as a gravedigger there.
When the cemetery was first opened, we was buried in the back of the cemetery.
Today, hundreds of people are buried at Prichard Memorial. An NBC 15 investigation discovered only half of this land was ever zoned for a cemetery, Section 3 on this map.
I could never remember digging a grave like in the front of the cemetery. It was always been in the back, and we always provide a grave marker
Today, these front two sections of the property contain dozens of graves in areas not zoned as a cemetery.
Partial 1 and 2, I don't know anything about that.
The city of Prichard has temporarily stopped all burials at Prichard Memorial Cemetery while it tries to figure out who is responsible for all these graves.
Well, I just don't want people to just think that he was really, that don't know him, that he really was a bad man trying to, rip people off, but, that's not, he wasn't that type of man.
He just was trying to get something started.
He was just trying to get something started to help people.
The legal part of the cemetery doesn't have a clear owner these days. We're still working to find out who's responsible, but we do know Section 1 of Prichard Memorial, not zoned for a cemetery, was purchased this year by New Birth Community Church in a tax sale. Its pastor is Cedric McMillan. Earlier this year, McMillan's church bought this property on the same block as Prichard Memorial. That's where Heritage Memorial Cemetery sits today. Just like Reese, McMillan too went through the city, thought he had it all worked out, started burying people, and wound up facing city citations. McMillan was convicted in city court just last month and still faces criminal charges for abuse of a corpse. In the Prichard Memorial situation, neither McMillan nor his church is accused of any wrongdoing. Kim and Greg.